first thing we talk about is the marketplace, followed by the buyer's profile. And if we were to marry these two components correctly, we will then have a bulletproof strategy. So let's kick off with the first topic over here, the new wave. So before we dive into the new wave, I think what's so important here is to understand right now is the seller's market and what creates this seller's market. So in this article by Straits Times graphic, it shows that the Q4 last year in 2021, we see a raise in 5 percentage points in the property price indexes. What this means is that this is the ever highest quarter-to-quarter jump since 2010. So you could imagine why the government actually introduced the cooling measures back in December 2021. Next, if you think this is just not enough, basically, we also were hit by all-time low supply. So over here, even though we have more new launches in terms of product launching, the size of the development are getting smaller. So with that, you could see that in the year of 2022, we are seeing only around 5,389 new homes that will be introduced in the market. And this is an all-time low in terms of volume to be introduced over the last 5 years. So we then talk about what is the bumper crop of new wave that's hitting the market. So over here, we see 26,423 units that will attain MOP end of this year. So where are they located? First thing, we see that in the northern side, we have Sembawang, mainly in the East Crown or even the Canberra precinct, and also Woodland, Yishun, and Ang Mo Kio. This forms a totality of 9,108 units. And then next, we then have in the eastern side, only one BTO called the Green Edge, 451 of them. And next, we have in the northern eastern area of Singapore, the northeast side of Singapore, we have Hougang, Punggol, Sengkang, and Serangoon, and these form 7,191 of them. And then in the central area, we have Bukit Merah, Queenstown, Kallang Whampoa, and Toa Payoh. And this is the area you want to focus on because these are the $1 million HDB reseller or beneficiaries when they sell their HDBs, okay? And there's 4,000 of them. And then finally, in the western side of Singapore, what we have is Bukit Batok, Choa Chu Kang, Jurong, and Jurong West. And in this area, we have about 5,600 of them, okay? So next, we then talk about a buyer strategy, how we're going to benefit in this red hot market. So you learned on the previous masterclass, we talk about two main factors that affects the performance of your assets. So first thing we talk about is the marketplace, followed by the buyer's profile. And if we were to marry these two components correctly, we will then have a bulletproof strategy. So in this instance, let's focus about the marketplace first. So in the marketplace, we talk about the GDP, inflation, which is the consumer price indexes, bank interest rate, market cycle. And so the lifespan of a property, which you learn on the masterclass, along with the developer's margin, execution of the entry and multiple exit strategy based on urban transformation. So if you talk about urban transformation here, this is what we are going to focus on today again. And this is basically the areas of where I'm going to highlight further. So urban transformation fundamentals, we learn there is 5 key fundamentals. The first one, we learned that new home sales actually has higher price resistance in the downturn market compared to a resale property. And to give you a bit of recap, basically what it means is that when you buy something for new homes, usually you get an equal footing not too far off from the previous buyer, all right? And of course, if you buy a resale property, usually you buy maybe after, you're probably the third round of buyers already, if you're buying something that is really beyond the 15-year shelf life. And with that, what happens is that your margin of safety would be almost one-fold from the first buyer. And next thing, we then talk about having the right entry and multiple exit strategy. Time to its transformation is key to maximize your capital gain. So understanding the urban transformation infrastructure that is going to complete down the road will give you a very optimum exit for your property. And then thirdly, we talk about never purchase the last plot of land, because when you do that, you are basically buying the most expensive plot, and then people use your price to climb. So your being the last plot will basically be the catalyst to boost other properties around your precinct. And then always select products within walking distance to an existing or upcoming train station, because we learned from Kelvin Boon's strategy when he exited his panorama along the Mayflower train station. That train station that is going to complete actually created the additional catalyst for his sale price. And then have reputable primary school within 1 km. This is important, okay, especially so if you are buying with the intent to stay and also waiting for paper value gain. All right. So the primary school is an evergreen so-called investment matrix because again, Singapore context. If you stay within 1 km, you basically have additional so-called leeway to get into or priority to get into the school. All right, and of course, distance central park. And this is important if you're buying 2-beders or 1-beders because again, how investors actually determine whether this is a good investment, they always look at rental yield. So with a skilled worker working in the business park, they are able to afford higher rental and that would then work out to be a higher rental yield for your property through time. Right now, we talk about the buyer's profile. So in this buyer's profile, what we are looking at is your intent of your purchase. A quick roundup, is it for legacy planning to pass it down to your next generation? Is it for dwelling property with good paper value gain? Or is it for passive investment vehicle? Or looking to cash in and out in the shortest period of time? What is your intent? Intent is very important. And then next thing, after the intent, we talk about the equity on hand. How much cash and CPF do you have that allow us to make the next move? So this will determine the unit size and type of investment approach that we can play, and also the sectors or district that we are accessible to. Next, we then talk about the strategy. Should we be paying, if we have an existing property, should we be paying it fully and then do a term loan on a gear up? Okay, or if you have a HDB on hand, should you sell off to avoid paying ABSD or to keep it for passive income? And then buying in trustee or buying in trust to avoid ABSD, what are the implications and holding period? And this is important because Kenny's will be sharing so much with you later, especially so with the newly increased ABSD as part of the cooling measures guideline. Should you be paying the mortgage loan by CPF or cash? All right, and that so depends so much on your CPF, how much you have, and your age as well. And then which banks are offering the best costs and rates, because this is important for you when we are holding the property for the longer term. So next, a seller's versus buyer's mindset, especially so in a transition when you are downgrading or upgrading. You are basically stepping in both shoes or wearing both caps, right? Okay. So should you be seller's focused, which is seller centric, or should it be buyer's focused, which is buyer centric? So in this instance, we talk about the mind, the psyche side of things. Okay. So in what scenario would you need to be buyer's focused, and what scenario then you need to be seller focused? I mean, your selling price is more important than your next purchase. All right. So in this instance, we talk about if your next property will cost more, that means you're upgrading, you need to be more buyer centric. All right. Why so? Giving you an example, imagine you are selling probably a 500,000 HDB flat, but you're upgrading to something that is 1.5 million. All right. So with that in mind, if you in the bid to negotiate something for maybe another 20,000 more for your sale price, but at the same time, if you're buying, especially so a new build development, one floor jump is probably $5,000, and the next floor jump that is available during this negotiation will probably bring you up by maybe an increment of 40,000 or so. If that's the case, even though you manage to achieve your 20,000, you are overall on a deficit of negative 20,000 as well, because your next jump is 40,000. All right. So with that, upgrading is very important. So we talk about if your next property is less or the same as your existing sale price. So if that's the case, we will then be seller focused, because again, your next purchase do not have so much urgency. There is not so much, when we do the cost benefit analysis, there's not so much pain on that next move. So when we are downgrading or when the property is less or the same, then we are not so worried about the purchase. We want to be more seller centric. So when there's no immediate need to buy the next property as well, you also want to be seller centric, because again, your main focus here is probably to cash out when it's a seller's market. Your importance here is to get out the money and then see how well you want to place your card along the way, which you can do that if you have no immediate need to buy the next home, or you have a place to bunk in the interim where rental will not even be on the card for you. All right. So next thing we need to talk about sell versus buy. Have your whole plan ready, because it's so important to focus on the intent and not just your immediate sale or purchase price, which is what many people are so hyper focused about. Should they be selling first or should they be buying first? And also, what is the how and the what? How to do it, what to buy. What I want to share with you here is exactly why are you doing it. The why is more important, because if your why is not even firm and you focus on the how and what, the means goal will basically deviate you miles away from your outcome. Because if you have a goal, just to share, if you have a goal, I'm right to say there's a million ways to get there, all right? But if you don't know what is your end goal, you end up just focusing on the how and the what, you end up going everywhere else. You're still miles away from your outcome altogether. All right, so it's so important to know your intent. So next, we then talk about the shelf life of investors. And so much so, we've been talking about the shelf life of a property, but now we focus on about profile. So when we talk about age of the owner less than 45 years old, what it means is that if you are buying a resale as an example, and you are 45 years old, basically bank lends you 65 minus your 45 age, which means a 20 years loan, all right? But when you buy a resale, within the next 6 months, you could actually do a repricing or refinancing. Usually it's a repricing because you can't change bank. So when you do a reprice, what happens is that the bank is able to stretch out your loan tenure by another 10 years. So in this instance, you can go up to 75 minus your age. All right. So in this instance, we'll be looking as high as or as long as 30 years tenure for your financing. So why is this important? Because this will basically make your monthly affordability in terms of mortgage more affordable.